Howdy, folks. Max Mogren reporting live for you here at Wake Up News. Oh, come on, don't do that. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Can you hear me? Anybody there? I think I've worked out my technical difficulties here. Max Mogren live for you, Wake Up News. This is Wake Up Wyoming, attempting a new format today. It is September 27th, 2017. Got the screen recorder going. Looks like it's working pretty good. We've got Brian Peterson, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. It's probably going to look a little weird on your screen, but I've got all these articles lined up. You can see in our headlines there today. We've got all sorts of things. 21 viewers. Thanks for tuning in. Chris Hedges sounding off on Truth Dig, September 17th. The ruling elites who grasp that the reigning ideology of global corporate capitalism and imperial expansion no longer has moral or intellectual credibility have mounted a campaign to shut down the platforms given to their critics. The attacks within this campaign include blacklisting, censorship, and slandering dissidents as foreign agents for Russia or purveyors of fake news. No dominant class can long retain control when the credibility of the ideas that justify its existence evaporates. It is forced, at that point, to resort to crude forms of coercion, intimidation, and censorship. This ideological collapse in the United States has transformed those of us who attack the corporate state into a potent threat, not because we reach large numbers of people, and certainly not because we spread Russian propaganda, but because the elites no longer have a plausible counter-argument. Interesting article there from Chris Hedges, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, New York Times best-selling author, former professor at Princeton University. And I am leading off with that article today because I want to show you something interesting here on the Wake Up News Insights. This is for our page, Wake Up News. You can see this is the last 7 days, the last week. Actions are up on the page by 42%. Page views up 14%. But likes are down 29%. Reach down 22%. Post engagement down 21%. Total video views down an astonishing 42%. And page followers down 27%. We were getting, for example, September 20th, you can see 476 organic likes. Right after the hurricane hit and we started covering that, we're down to about half of that. Same with our follows. We were getting 531 organic page follows on September 20th. Since then, we kind of flatlined at half of that. And you can see that too with our people reached. Same sort of thing. We reached 337,000 on the 20th, but then it's been in this line ever since. 83,000 on September 23rd. So just interesting to see there. All these different websites, like the World Socialist website, just chimed in about how Google had cut their traffic substantially. We might be experiencing a little of that here at Wake Up News. We're not afraid to question. For example, with the case of the hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Katia, and Maria, why weren't these hurricanes steered back out to sea using technologies that have existed for decades, right? Really poignant question there, not getting answered by the mainstream, not even being asked by the mainstream. We got 57 viewers. Thanks for tuning in. There's a little lag here. Hannah Coben chiming in. They like to mess with people's pages. It's rad, right? Exactly. But moving along here, getting into it again, I took a good look at Rice Farmer's news links, ricefarmer.blogspot.com. Check out his work. He's got a really doomy perspective, chronicling the decline of industrial civilization. I'm not quite as doomy as he is, but his work, his research is impeccable. The second headline there, we're going to get into Puerto Rico pretty quick here, but to look at how absurd the whole cybersecurity state is. Deloitte hit by cyber attack revealing clients' secret emails. Okay, this company in 2012 was called the world's top cybersecurity consulting company. One of the world's big four accountancy firms has been targeted by a sophisticated attack. This sophisticated attack involves somebody getting a password that compromised the confidential emails and plans of some of its blue chip clients, The Guardian can reveal. Deloitte, which is registered in London, has global headquarters in New York, was the victim of a cybersecurity attack that went unnoticed for months. Okay, they provide auditing, tax consultancy, and high-end cybersecurity advice to some of the world's biggest banks, multinational companies, media enterprises, pharmaceutical firms, and government agencies. The Guardian understands they discovered the hack in March of this year, but it is believed the attackers may have had access to their systems since October or November 2016. So that's 5 months before the world's top cybersecurity consultant noticed that they've been hacked. The hacker compromised the firm's global email server through an administrator's account that in theory gave them privileged, unrestricted access to all areas. The account required only a single password and did not have two-step verification, sources said. I mean, I've even got two-step verification on my $100 smartphone from Walmart. In addition to emails, The Guardian understands the hackers have potential access to usernames, passwords, IP addresses, architectural diagrams for businesses, and health information. Some emails had attachments with sensitive security and design details. The breach is believed to have been U.S.-focused and was regarded as so sensitive that only a handful of their most senior partners and lawyers were informed. Pretty wild that 11 months later, it's hitting the papers. But again, though all major companies are targeted by hackers, the breach is a deep embarrassment to Deloitte, which offers potential clients advice on how to manage the risks posed by sophisticated cybersecurity attacks. Cyber risk is more than a technology security issue, it's a business risk, Deloitte tells potential customers on its website. While today's fast-paced innovation enables strategic advantage, it also exposes businesses to potential cyber attack. Embedding best practice cyber behaviors help our clients to minimize the impact on business. Deloitte has a cyber intelligence center which provides clients with round-the-clock, business-focused operational security. Blah, blah, blah. In 2012, Deloitte, which has offices all over the world, was ranked the best cybersecurity consultant in the world. Earlier this month, as you all know from here at Wake Up News, Equifax, the U.S. credit monitoring agency, admitted the personal data of 143 million U.S. customers have been accessed or stolen in a massive hack in May. Of course, they waited several months to let people know that their sensitive financial and personal information had been stolen. It is also revealed it had been a victim of an earlier breach in March. So there's your cybersecurity complex for you. We've got 100 viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Is this working properly? I'm looking at my screen here. I just want to make sure it's good. Okay. There's a lag here, so I really can't get to your comments too much. I'm going to keep moving along here. We're looking at Puerto Rico. Okay, the situation in Puerto Rico really bad. Hysteria is starting to spread. Puerto Rico devastated in the wake of Hurricane Maria. I've been working on an article on this topic, my second article on the topic. The first one I put out, stranger than fiction. Donald Trump's uncle translated Tesla's stolen docs on weather control for the U.S. military. Okay, that's a picture of Maria taking out Puerto Rico right there. Real serious situation. But interestingly, yeah, Donald Trump's uncle, John D. Trump, was the guy who translated Nikola Tesla's posthumously confiscated papers, was a member of the Radiation Lab Steering Committee and assistant director by the name of John G. Trump. For our military, John G. Trump translated the Tesla papers from scientist to English. Our military, in turn, decided which of Tesla's ideas were of military value and thus worthy of further exploration. John G. Trump went on to serve as head of the British branch of the MIT Radiation Laboratory. If you're wondering, yes, John G. Trump was the uncle of the new United States President Donald J. Trump. In fact, the Donald's middle name of John was given to him in honor of his uncle. So that's pretty wild, huh? What does nephew Trumpo have to say about the situation? Well, on September 25th, a couple days ago, after all the dust settled surrounding the NFL fiasco, what did Trump say? I'm going to zoom out a little so I'm not blocking it here with my ugly mug. Well, I guess I'm going to be blocking it no matter what. Texas and Florida are doing great, but Puerto Rico, which is already suffering from broken infrastructure and massive debt, is in deep trouble. Its old electrical grid, which was in terrible shape, was devastated. Much of the islands was destroyed, with billions of dollars owed to Wall Street and the banks, which sadly must be dealt with. Food, water, and medical are top priorities and doing well. Hashtag FEMA. But is it really doing well? I don't think so. Looking at the situation there, hysteria is starting to spread. No power, little access to water, dwindling food. The situation in Puerto Rico right now. There's a lot of coverage out there in the mainstream on Puerto Rico, but none of them ask the question, why weren't these hurricanes steered back out to sea? Pretty reasonable question in light of the situation. 5 days after Maria tore through Puerto Rico, bisecting the entire island, the U.S. territory is in the grips of a serious, life-threatening crisis, with humanitarian aid getting in far more slowly than is needed. The island is running short on food, fuel, and access to clean water, and there's limited communications, which means some communities have received no information about the rescue efforts underway, let alone any rescue effort materials. 80% of the transmission infrastructure for power was destroyed. The New York Times reports it could be 4 to 6 months before power is restored on the island. That's half a year, with Puerto Rico's 3.4 million residents relying on generators. Half a year without air conditioning in the tropical climate. Half a year where electric pumps can't bring running water into homes. Half a year where even the most basic tasks of modern life are made difficult. Of course, the economy of Puerto Rico is going to tank. It's largely a tourism-based economy. Not too many people are going to go to a tropical island where everybody has lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods, and there's no electricity. The devastation is vast, Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rossello said in a statement Monday. Make no mistake, this is a humanitarian disaster involving 3.4 million U.S. citizens. And it's not just Puerto Rico, my friends. 6 other Caribbean nations are in the crisis after the hurricane. We reported here on Wake Up News. We heard back from Aaron at Storm Clouds Gathering. He's on the small island of Dominica, where their Pongavi experiment is located, an off-grid permaculture experiment on the island of Dominica, the French-speaking Caribbean island. And then the island of Barbuda, where people have lived for 300 years and nobody's there anymore. The entire island has been evacuated. All 1,600 inhabitants of Barbuda still can't return home after Hurricane Irma forced them to abandon the island. Okay, Barbuda, a very low-lying island. Dominica, a lot of volcanoes comprising that island. 31 killed on Dominica. The U.S. Virgin Islands, another U.S. territory, still 48,000 people without power. So, huge deal in the area. New York Post reporting that the U.S. is expected to lift shipping restrictions for Puerto Rico hurricane relief. That article came out today, September 27th. What is this Jones Act? It would lift restrictions on ships that can provide aid to the island ravaged by Hurricane Maria. The Jones Act prevents any ships from unloading in Puerto Rico that aren't flying the U.S. flag manned by U.S. crews. On Tuesday, Team Trump denied the request to waive shipping restrictions to help get fuel and supplies to Puerto Rico, saying it would do nothing to address the island's damaged ports. But it sounds like it's not happening yet. The U.S. won't waive shipping restrictions for Puerto Rico relief. Interestingly, John McCain and Trump are going head-to-head on this. McCain called the department's decision unacceptable and warned that Puerto Rico faces a humanitarian crisis as the island's 3.4 million people struggle to survive without power or clean water. Again, citing the statistic, officials estimating the island being without power for up to 6 months. It's unacceptable to force the people of Puerto Rico to pay at least twice as much for food, clean drinking water supplies, and infrastructure due to Jones Act requirements as they work to recover from this disaster, McCain said. Now more than ever, it is time to realize the devastating effect of this policy and implement a full repeal of this archaic and burdensome act, he wrote. Thanks for tuning in. We got 130 viewers here at Wake Up News. Is this working for you? I can't really see if it's working. So I see a lot of likes flowing in. I'm just going to keep going with it. Again, here at Wake Up News, we pondered the question, why is this happening? Okay, we laid out a couple potential ideas there. A few thoughts come to mind. Disaster capitalism. The term disaster capitalism was coined by Naomi Klein in her excellent 2007 book, The Shock Doctrine, to describe the long-time practice of shocking financial, political, and social systems so some people can profit from disasters while consolidating power through restructuring. Wars are the most blatantly obvious example of this practice, and weather wars are no exception. Okay, consolidating political power. Currently, Puerto Rico is an unincorporated U.S. territory, but that status is controversial and could change soon. Like colonial subjects throughout history, many Puerto Ricans understandably want independence. Of course, this is difficult to attain when deeply indebted to the occupying empire builders. Okay, Puerto Rico, 74 billion in debt. Looks like they're facing about $30 billion in damages due to Hurricane Maria. And so far, only $1 billion in disaster relief has been offered up. So about 3% of what it's going to take to actually repair Puerto Rico. It's no wonder they can't get the power back on when there's no money to do so. And of course, with the economy crashing there due to the situation, due to the entire grid going down, people struggling just to get food and water. The governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rossello, has said there's going to be a mass exodus. There's 3.4 million Americans who live on the island of Puerto Rico. What's going to happen? Well, are they going to come to the U.S. and try to find jobs? Probably, because most people can't afford to spend half a year not working, right? So what's that going to do? Well, it's going to, I don't know what it's going to do. But one thing that's interesting is Puerto Rico has been labeled a potential tax haven for the rich. August 22nd, 2017 at 3 a.m. Why they push it at that time of day, I don't know. But Bloomberg Business Week chiming in, just a month before the hurricane happened. Could Puerto Rico be the next hot tax haven? A loophole may make it a good place for foreigners to keep their cash. Some 65,000 Puerto Ricans left their bankrupt U.S. island commonwealth last year. A group of private bankers are moving the other way. They're increasingly opening offshore banks known as international financial entities, which were created by a Puerto Rican law in 2012. There are 44 IFEs now, with 18 opening in the past year, according to data compiled by the U.S. territory's financial regulator. Just in the last 6 months, we probably closed 7 deals for international banks, says Ryan Christensen, president of Christensen Commercial Real Estate, a brokerage based in Puerto Rico that leases office space. I would venture to guess that the folks at Christian Commercial Real Estate have got the power on. It goes on and on. Little known loophole made possible by the IFE structure. It lets non-U.S. account holders put money in Puerto Rico anonymously and potentially avoid taxes at home, even if they benefit from the stability and safety of the U.S. That's become increasingly attractive because of a new global financial disclosure system taking effect right now. Under the Common Reporting Standard, more than 100 countries have agreed to automatically provide to one another annual reports about accounts belonging to people subject to taxes in each member nation. Okay, so basically, long story short, taxes, Puerto Rico. Bottom line, in the past year, 18 offshore banks opened in Puerto Rico, which falls between the cracks of some international financial disclosure agreements. So it seems to me that the agenda in Puerto Rico is to, interesting wording there too, huh? The agenda in Puerto Rico is to get all the poor people to leave so a bunch of rich people can buy up the island for pennies on the dollar and use it to evade paying taxes. Pretty standard story throughout human history. Of course, very few people ask the question, why weren't these hurricanes steered? Geoengineering Watch, Dane Wigington's group is the one group that's really been chiming in on it. I don't really buy everything Dane says. I like the term chemtrails. I don't believe that CO2 is causing most of the warming we're seeing. I think it has a lot more to do with weather modification. But Dane, despite what you think about him, he does ask the questions. You know, he might very well be controlled opposition, but at the same time, he does address the vaccine agenda. He does address the depopulation agenda. He does address weather weaponry. So I'm not going to throw away his contributions entirely, but I do take them with a grain of salt. Dane asking a few days ago, was Puerto Rico the target of weather warfare from Hurricane Maria manipulation? Was the case the same with Texas and Hurricane Harvey, Cuba and Florida with Hurricane Irma? What are the mathematical odds of the U.S. and Caribbean nations experiencing a sudden rash of catastrophic hurricanes after a 12-year major hurricane landfall drought? Why was there a 12-year major cyclone landfall drought in the U.S. to begin with? These questions are especially puzzling when we consider that the rest of the world has record-strength cyclones with record frequency during the same period. Climate intervention and cyclone manipulation programs are a verifiable reality, not theory or speculation. Couldn't agree with you more on that one, Dane. And then they got a 6-minute video there laying it all. Though the agendas behind the escalating weather warfare operations can be argued, the reality of these programs is beyond legitimate debate if available data is examined. How long will populations sit idly by while Earth's life support systems are completely derailed by the ongoing climate engineering assault? So a very good question being posed there by Dane Wigington. Again, I take a lot of his work with a grain of salt because he's the biggest guy in the climate engineering situation, in climate engineering activism. But he also believes that CO2 is warming the planet catastrophically. This is some interesting imagery. That's Puerto Rico on the 24th of July, 2017. Here's Puerto Rico 2 days ago. You can see how much the lights have gone out all over the island. There's still some power in some places, people running off generators or near power plants where the infrastructure is still in place, but wow, look at that. You can see Puerto Rico has significantly lost power. Whole cities have gone dark. So, and then a lot more imagery here. This one, this must be some pretty wealthy neighborhood there, but you can see they lost the entire wall there. These people lost their whole home. There we see just catastrophic destruction. Interestingly, though, the power lines are still standing there. We see these statistics about 80% of the power infrastructure down in Puerto Rico, but a lot of the images you see, the power lines are still up. For example, here up top, obviously severe devastation in Puerto Rico, but the power lines are still up in that picture. Heart goes out to all these poor people in Puerto Rico. So they're just a smattering of images from Puerto Rico. You see how bad it really is. I'm going to check back in here. We got 106 people tuned in. Thank you so much. Kate Catanella chiming in. Chemtrails also hold heat in our atmosphere, causing to heat up the planet. I think that is feasible. Yeah, Kate, I'm with you on that. That seems to be the general consensus there, and I'm in full agreement with you there. We could go on a NASA website and find out the same thing. Again, what's going on here? It looks like they want to, assuming that these storms were steered, these storms could have been weakened. They could have been steered away from Puerto Rico, but instead they caused massive devastation, not just to Puerto Rico, but to 6 different islands. You can see Maria is heading back out to sea now. Looks like the next hurricane in line, I forget its name, but that one not an issue as well. So thank God those are going back out to sea. Another potential agenda behind this Puerto Rico hurricane thing, the never-ending natural disasters all over the world, when the technologies do exist to prevent or at least diminish the impacts of natural disasters, pushing the climate change agenda. Despite having a president who adamantly denies the existence of climate change, U.S. establishment institutions ranging from the military to mainstream media repetitively proclaimed climate change one of the greatest threats to people, planet, and the political order. These proclamations purportedly predict the future decades out, and some even propose global weather modification programs to prevent disastrous outcomes. Okay, geoengineering. You can go on a Google News search right now and find 30,000 articles on geoengineering, but they never address the possibility of an ongoing weather war, even though the development of these technologies has been documented for decades. In this age of disaster capitalism, some people are now calling it the age of disruption. I think that's a pretty effective term as well. Those who know how and when the climate will change, because they are in fact changing it, provide themselves with an unprecedented opportunity to grab power and profit off the suffering of people and planet. Within the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution policies, those who create the problem, in this case unpredictable weather and unprecedented disasters, promote a predictable reaction, which we see in Puerto Rico. You have uncertainty, terror, impoverishment, dependency, and for people, even if you're not directly affected, a sense of guilt and shame because we all rely so heavily on fossil fuels unnecessarily. And then they propose and implement a pre-planned solution. Well, what are the proposed solutions for climate change? It's carbon taxes, global governance, and geoengineering. Geoengineering, arguably the primary cause of the horribly catastrophic disasters we see all over the world today. And these solutions serve to empower and enrich themselves, okay? Summed up nicely there. The ruling elite create a problem, anticipating in advance the reaction of the population to the crisis, and thus conditioning the people to call for change. Problem, reaction, solution, politics. Also, depopulation. Depopulation doesn't necessarily just mean killing people. It also means displacing people. And right now, we're in the midst of a global refugee crisis. There are more refugees right now for various reasons, wars, disasters, whether natural or weather warfare related. 65.3 million refugees. How many refugees are going to come out of Puerto Rico in the next few months as this whole situation plays out? It's a disturbing thing. But also another interesting thing about the whole hurricane situation, and not just with hurricanes, it's happening in a lot of places where they're spraying chemicals. It's funny, people are so resistant to the notion of chemtrails, right? Oh, the government couldn't possibly be spraying chemtrails, but they're spraying 6 million acres with chemicals using airplanes in response to Hurricane Harvey in Texas, okay? Amid statewide efforts to clean up the aftermath left by historic flooding caused by Hurricane Harvey, the Pentagon announced it had dispatched C-130H sprayers from the Air Force Reserve's 910th Airlift Wing in order to assist with recovery efforts in eastern Texas. However, these recovery efforts have little to do with rebuilding damaged structures or with the resettlement of evacuees. Instead, they are set to spray chemicals in order to help control pest insect populations, which they allege pose a health risk to rescue workers and residents of Houston. Okay, they're spraying a chemical called NALED. But what's interestingly, however, the insecticide NALED, manufactured and sold by a strategic partner of Monsanto, is currently banned by the European Union due to the unacceptable risk it presents to human health. NALED is a known neurotoxin in animals and humans as it inhibits acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme essential to nerve function and communication, and has even been known to have caused paralysis. Mounting scientific evidence, including a recent Harvard study, has also pointed to NALED's responsibility for the mass die-off of North American honeybees. Just one day of NALED spraying in South Carolina killed more than 2.5 million bees the last year. It goes on and on. So NALED, extremely disturbing thing. Studies in the U.S. have also shown that pregnant women exposed to NALED had a 60% higher chance of having a child with an autism spectrum disorder. Okay, the rate of autism in this country has gone up significantly. When I was a kid in 1981, My odds of getting autism, of being born with an autism spectrum disorder, were 1 in 10,000. Kids nowadays, it's 1 in 48. Very big deal. Very, very, very big deal. But interestingly, you can see agrochem corporate pressures to keep NALED on the market. Puerto Rico. In the case of Puerto Rico, recent U.S. military attempts to spray NALED were shut down by widespread protests. A year ago, this happened. In August of 2016, NPR, which people take as a pretty reliable mainstream source, reported Gutierrez says the government of Washington wants to spray us. That phrase, spray us, is repeated a lot in Puerto Rico by opponents of the aerial spraying plan. Residents' response to Zika and their resistance to aerial spraying should be seen within a political context, he says, in which many Puerto Ricans distrust the U.S. government, with good reason. We are an invaded country, Gutierrez says. We've been a colony of the U.S. for 118 years, and there's been a lot of experimentation done on us. And so people have had enough of that. The pesticide that was going to be sprayed in NALED goes on and on. And that's that. We don't understand it except for what might have been some economic interest in getting rid of that product, Rivera Gutierrez, a Puerto Rican man, says. Now it seems, in the wake of Hurricane Maria, that Puerto Ricans will be subject to pressures for spraying again. Perhaps Maria was steered that way for the sake of poisoning the people of Puerto Rico. Okay, again, people ridicule the notion of chemtrails, but here we see very prime examples in very recent history. Right after Hurricane Harvey, big C-130 spray planes run by the U.S. military spraying a toxin, a neurotoxin, that is banned by the European Union all over Texas, or all, 6,000 acres, 6 million acres of Texas, I forget. Key thing is, these are big planes spraying nasty chemicals all over people. The notion of the government spraying poisons out of airplanes is widely accepted, though underreported by the mainstream media. Even the History Channel recently covered the rainbow of chemical weapons deployed covertly during the Vietnam War. Okay, this is an excerpt from the History Channel coverage on this. While Agent Orange may have been the most well-known chemical used during the Vietnam War, it wasn't the only one. An entire rainbow of new chemical formulations rained down on Vietnam's forests and fields. The rainbow herbicides, as they were known, were only used as weapons in the war for a little over a decade. Just a decade. But their consequences can still be felt today. The chemicals were deployed as part of Operation Ranch Hand, a military operation that lasted from 1962 to 1971. Ranch Hand's unofficial motto, "Only you can prevent a forest," riffed off of Smokey Bear's plea for people to prevent forest fires. Smokey Bear, the lovable cartoon bear, saying only you can prevent forest fires. The wry sarcasm of the phrase sums up the irony of the mission. Controversial then and now, it's still not clear whether Operation Ranch Hand, a form of chemical warfare, was even permitted under international law. Herbicidal warfare has been a military dream since the 1940s, when Allied researchers began to brainstorm ways to use chemicals to scorch the earth. However, early plans to use chemicals to, for example, starve the Japanese by ruining their rice crops faltered. Okay? There was another top secret mission. This was not disclosed to the American public when it was happening, when they're spraying chemicals over Vietnam. Another covert aerial spraying program over Vietnam that took place around the same time with no congressional oversight was Operation Popeye, which was using the weather as a weapon 50 years ago. So the notion that the weather can't be used for a weapon is absurd. Ironically, the same media outlets that acknowledge the history of our own government spraying poisons out of airplanes routinely ignore or ridicule the notion of weather modification chemicals being similarly deployed, despite the well-documented history of military and corporate weather modification programs dating back to the time when Donald Trump's uncle translated Nikola Tesla's stolen papers. You can't even make this shit up, my friends. If you want to know more about weather modification, check out weathermodificationhistory.com, an excellent website made by the brilliant genius researcher Jim Lee of climateviewer.com. Climate Viewer News as well, Climate Viewer 3D. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Can't, dead on. Here's an interesting article here. I'm going to just pop this one open here. There's also, in the midst of the whole Puerto Rico situation, this is an old article from 2 years ago, a couple months. 4 reasons independence is the right path for Puerto Rico. We can't stress it enough. Puerto Rico is already deep in debt. It's already completely at the whim of the U.S. government. Okay, there have been austerity measures in Puerto Rico for the last several months since the country effectively declared bankruptcy. Austerity measures like Greece, post-economic collapse, right? Puerto Rico is in a state of emergency. And mind you, this is 2 years old. Puerto Rico is in a state of emergency. Its public debt, which Governor Garcia Padilla, now there's Ricardo Rossello, recently declared unpayable, is $73 billion and counting. Now it's $74 billion. Unemployment is hovering at a dismal 14%, and 46% of the island's inhabitants are living below the poverty line, a rate higher than any state on the mainland. Puerto Rico's recent surge in outmigration is also cause for concern. Spurred largely by the economic crisis, a historic exodus of residents to the mainland translates to a shrinking tax base, which in turn puts additional strain on an already weakened economy and burdens those remaining on the island with higher taxes and dwindling resources. Although a variety of suggestions have been proposed to save the island from default, there are 4 reasons a clearly articulated multi-year transition to independence is the only long-term viable solution for Puerto Rico. Interestingly, the current governor of Puerto Rico has been an avid proponent for statehood. Okay, he's the president of the political party, I think it's called the PNP in Puerto Rico, or the PPN, I forget the exact acronym, but he's been pushing for statehood. I don't know what's going to happen in Puerto Rico, but a lot of people want independence. 4 reasons. Puerto Rico's serious and worsening economy is largely rooted in its colonial status. Statehood is a pipe dream. Other nations have proven that independence is possible. Bad grammar there, HuffPost. And an independent Puerto Rico would more readily protect the welfare and rights of its people than the United States. Since the U.S. invasion of Puerto Rico in 1898, Washington's relationship with Puerto Rico has been one of exploitation and convenience. From the Ponce massacre and government-sanctioned programs aimed at forcibly sterilizing working-class Puerto Rican women to unethical testing and human radiation experiments on Puerto Rican prisoners, the U.S. government has a shameful track record of transgressions on the island. It's no wonder the Puerto Ricans did not want Uncle Sam spraying NALED out of his C-130 planes over their heads. And let's not forget Vieques. For more than 60 years, the U.S. Navy used the island of Vieques as target practice. Though the bombing stopped in 2003, the U.S.'s legacy on Vieques continues in the forms of destroyed land. Over half the island is uninhabitable, shattered livelihoods, and increased rates of cancer, birth defects, and illnesses, the result of contamination from years of continuous bombings. Yet, because Puerto Rico lacks any real autonomy or representation, these and other travesties, both social and economic, are largely ignored. Independence would hold accountable elected representatives at all levels of government and restore power to the people. So, that's an old article. Obviously, the situation in Puerto Rico, much, much worse. People can't even get food. No power, little access to water, dwindling food. The situation in Puerto Rico right now. So whatever you can do to help out, if you've got friends in Puerto Rico, I would love to interview them. Get them on the hook. Thank you all for tuning in. We still got 80 viewers here. I wonder if Is this locked up or what? I'm looking at it here on my screen and it doesn't seem to be moving. So I just want to make sure this is still working. I'm seeing likes. I got 90 viewers. I'm going to keep going. Again, Puerto Rico. Could Puerto Rico be the next hot tax haven? 10 years from now when the dust settles, probably going to be a bunch of rich assholes claiming Puerto Rico status, right? In the midst of all this, this hurricane stuff, what does the mainstream media do? They blame climate change. They blame climate change. It's all CO2. It's all your fault, humanity, for burning all these fossil fuels that Nikola Tesla rendered obsolete 130 plus years ago. But Nature, the International Weekly Journal of Science, telling us today, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius may still be possible. Analysis suggests that researchers have underestimated how much carbon humanity can emit before reaching this level of warming. What's it all about? The climate scientist has delivered a rare bit of good news. It could be easier than previously thought to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels as called for in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. But even if the team is right, and some researchers are already questioning the conclusions, heroic efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions will still be necessary to limit warming. Those aren't my words. That's Nature Geoscience coming at you. Published on the 18th of September of 2017, the analysis focuses in part on the fact that global climate models used in the 2013 report to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, tend to overestimate the extent of warming that has already occurred. After adjusting for that discrepancy and running further models, the authors of the latest study found that the amount of carbon that humanity can emit from 2015 onward while holding temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius is nearly 3 times greater than estimated by the IPCC, or even larger if there is aggressive action on greenhouse gases beyond carbon dioxide. Okay? The implications for global policymakers are significant. No shit. And this is coming out of Nature. Like, this is no, Nature's full of BS because they never address geoengineering. They never address the intentional human impact on weather and climate. But this is stuff that people within the scientific community take seriously. And the Independent in UK picked up that story. Global warming may be occurring more slowly than previously thought, study suggests. I got a pretty picture there so you know it's legit. Computer modeling used a decade ago to predict how quickly global average temperatures would rise may have forecast too much warming, a study has found. The Earth warmed more slowly than the models forecast, meaning the planet has a slightly better chance of meeting the goals set out in the Paris Climate Agreement, including limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This is, again, same study, so check it out in Nature Geoscience. It's probably behind a paywall, but if you're smart, you can get around it. At the Paris Climate Summit in 2015, Professor Michael Grubb, a professor of international energy and climate change at the University College London, said, all the evidence from the past 15 years leads me to conclude that actually delivering 1.5 degrees Celsius is simply incompatible with what? Democracy. But speaking to the Times, he said, when the facts change, I change my mind. As John Maynard Keynes, the print economist, said, it's still likely to be very difficult to achieve these kinds of changes quickly enough, but we are in a better place than I thought. Okay, it goes on and on. Check it out if you want to at the Independent. But the key thing I wanted to bring out here, maybe it's in the previous article. This is Nature, the International Weekly Journal of Science. Okay, the amount of carbon that humanity can emit, again, this is one study, but this is Nature Geoscience, which is widely regarded as being a very reputable scientific journal, saying the amount of carbon that humanity can emit from 2015 onward while holding temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius is nearly 3 times greater than estimated by the IPCC, or even larger if there is aggressive action on greenhouse gases beyond carbon dioxide. Okay, aggressive action on greenhouse gases beyond carbon dioxide. Does anybody out there in the audience know what the most prominent and potent greenhouse gas is? Anybody? Put it in the comments. I can't read them, but I'm going to read them when I'm done with this. The most powerful greenhouse gas is water vapor. It's not carbon dioxide, it's water. Okay? That's CO2 emissions. We don't want that. Again, water vapor is the most powerful greenhouse gas. We can find this in a popular science article from 2009. Okay, carbon dioxide only causes 9 to 26% of the greenhouse effect. Somewhere in there, they don't know exactly what. But the important thing to note is that water vapor accounts for about 70% of the greenhouse effect. One thing that is definitely affecting water vapor's behavior in the atmosphere is chemtrails, aka geoengineering, aka persistent contrails. This phenomenon we see all too commonly in the skies overhead, where planes, you got a nice blue sky, you got a beautiful blue sky, then you see all these planes flying overhead, leaving these trails. Next thing you know, you got this high wispy haze, okay? What you see there, that's water vapor. Well, actually, that's ice crystals. In the before picture, we have water vapor, because water vapor is invisible. Water vapor is clear. Well, water vapor is not opaque. Whereas clouds like these high wispy clouds, are ice. They trap heat. The sunlight gets through. You go out on a day where this after picture is, or this during picture, most of the sunlight still gets through. You still cast a strong shadow. You still need your sunglasses. About 89% of the sunlight gets through. And then when the heat that would radiate back out into space in the before picture, it's trapped like a big blanket. So tell your friends, it's a big deal. Is this thing still locked up? I hope it's not. On my screen, it's not showing me any movement out of me, but I'm just assuming it's working. Yep, that's a good sign. This is kind of fun. Check this out. It's like being in a crazy, I don't know. It's like being in the movie Tron or something. But let's move along here with our video. We're getting a lot of likes flowing in. We still got 80 viewers. What else do we got going on here? So, good news. The climate, climate change is not going to kill us. Weather warfare very well might. And my heart goes out to all these poor people in Puerto Rico dealing with this situation. Again, the Puerto Rican governor, Ricardo Rosello, says there will be a mass exodus. I don't know if this is going to play.
Puerto Rico had already started doing their part. I was working on a very aggressive fiscal agenda. We have reduced over $1.5 billion.
That's austerity. Okay, so what's he saying? A humanitarian crisis and a mass exodus to the United States. Pretty much sums it up. In equally depressing news, sorry, Ricardo, still chatting there. I don't mean to make light of the situation. It's very fucking serious. I just try to keep my sense of humor throughout all this. 6, mass extinction of wildlife also threatens global food supply, says The Guardian. And on the topic of geoengineering, on the topic of chemtrails, stuff like this getting sprayed in the sky, an interesting study came out from Lund University in Sweden just the other day. Brain damage in fish affected by plastic nanoparticles. A new study from Lund University in Sweden showed that plastic particles in water may end up inside fish brains. The plastic can cause brain damage, which is the likely cause of behavioral disorders observed in the fish. Nanoparticles. How does plastic become nanoparticles? Is it just breaking down, getting really, really small from wave action and decomposition due to the sun's effects out there in the ocean? Or is it something else? Calculations have shown that 10% of all plastic produced around the world ultimately ends up in the oceans. As a result, a large majority of global marine debris is in fact plastic waste. Human production of plastics is a well-documented environmental concern, but few studies have studied the effects of tiny plastic particles known as nanoplastic particles. Our study is the first to show that nano-sized plastic particles can accumulate in fish brains, said Tommy Saderval, a chemistry researcher at Lund University. The Lund University researchers studied how nanoplastics may be transported through different organisms in the aquatic ecosystem, i.e. via algae and animal plankton to larger fish. Tiny plastic particles in the water are eaten by animal plankton, which in turn are eaten by fish. According to Sederval, the study includes several interesting results on how plastic of different sizes affects aquatic organisms. Most importantly, it provides evidence that nanoplastic particles can indeed cross the blood-brain barrier in fish and thus accumulate inside fish's brain tissue. In addition, the researchers involved in the present study have demonstrated the occurrence of behavioral disorders in fish that are affected by nanoplastics. They eat slower and explore their surroundings less. The researchers believe that these behavioral changes may be linked to brain damage caused by the presence of nanoplastics in the brain. Another result of the study is that animal plankton die when exposed to nano-sized plastic particles, while larger plastic particles do not affect them. Overall, these different effects of nanoplastics may have an impact on the ecosystem as a whole. It is important to study how plastics affect ecosystems and that nanoplastic particles likely have a more dangerous impact on aquatic ecosystems than larger pieces of plastic, says Tommy Saderval. However, he does not dare to draw the conclusion that plastic nanoparticles could accumulate in other tissues in fish and thus potentially be transmitted to humans through consumption. No, we are not aware of any such studies and are therefore very cautious about commenting on it, says Tommy Saderval. The present study was conducted in collaboration with the divisions of biochemistry and structural biology, aquatic ecology, and the Center for Environmental and Climate Research at Lund University. Okay, so that's a big deal, but important to note there, if anybody wants to get in touch with these guys, here's Tommy Sederval's contact info right there. Hit him up. Senior lecturer at the Department of Chemistry at Lund University. Give him a call. Send him an email. Maybe I'll send him an email as soon as I finish this video saying, hey, Tommy, when you're looking for plastic nanoparticles in fish's brains, you might want to check for nanoparticles of aluminum as well. Aluminum, barium, strontium, everything associated with the whole geoengineering chemtrail agenda. The interesting article that came out not that long ago, drinking water. Speaking of plastic nanoparticles, The Guardian on September 5th, just a couple of weeks ago, plastic fibers found in tap water around the world, study reveals. Tests show billions of people globally are drinking water contaminated by plastic particles, with 83% of samples found to be polluted. Okay? Now, plastic fibers found in tap water around the world is a very big deal. How's it getting there? Microplastic contamination has been found in tap water in countries around the world, leading to calls from scientists for urgent research on the implications for health. The United States had the highest contamination rate at 94%, with plastic fibers found in tap water sampled at sites including Congress buildings, the US EPA headquarters, and Trump Tower in New York. Lebanon and India had the next highest rates. So let's take these two articles. I'm going to slide this one over here, put them together. Lund University reporting that nanoparticles of plastic accumulate in fish brains. They cross the blood-brain barrier and thus accumulate inside the fish's brain tissue, and that these particles are linked to behavioral disorders. They eat slower and explore their surroundings less. The researchers believe that these behavioral changes may be linked to brain damage caused by the presence of nanoplastics in the brain. Apparently, in humans, not the U.S. with the highest rate of obesity in the world, perhaps plastic fibers in tap water cause people to eat more, but are similar in their effects on people exploring their surroundings less. All y'all, I encourage you, please, I'm begging you, purify your water to the best of your ability. You know, we're 70% water. We need healthy water to survive. And perhaps, you know, Congress, the government, the EPA, Donald Trump, they've all been fucking up pretty great lately. But maybe it's not their fault. Maybe they just got so much nanoplastic in their brains they can't help it. I don't know. That's what we're doing here in the live stream. We still got 57 viewers, still got likes flowing in. It seems like it's locked up. If somebody can chime in here, just give me some comments here. Okay, good. Like I said, on my screen here, the video is locked up, so I can't see it. I guess you can see it, right? You can see that I'm just stuck at that stage of the game, but it seems to be working for you, so thank God. Moving on to, here's some good news. The French government declares war on pesticides. This is coming out of the AFP on September 25th, 2017. I thought glyphosate was banned in France, but I guess it's not, because this is hot off the press. Glyphosate is the main component in the best-selling herbicide Roundup produced by the U.S. agrochemical giant Monsanto, but there have been concerns it may cause cancer. Okay, if you've got Roundup in your garage, throw that shit away, please. If you go to the hardware store and they're selling that shit, you go to Ace Hardware, they'll have a whole fucking wall of it. Tell the manager, be like, you know this stuff kills people, right? But even in France, they still spray this shit. Paris, AFP. France is planning to cut back on use of all pesticides, the government said Monday, though it rode back on an announcement of an outright ban on controversial chemical glyphosate. It goes on and on. You know, we all know about Roundup. Interesting name. Some 1.3 million people have signed an online petition calling for a ban of the chemical. So there are governments and corporations working hand in hand, not really to help us out. The MIT Technology Review, they need better artists. Okay, they got some really talented scientists there, but artistically they're lacking a little. Gwendol, no offense. Governments are testing their own cryptocurrencies by Mike Orcutt, September 25th, 2017. Let's see what the crypto markets are doing today, shall we? Again, chemtrails. They're real. Geoengineering, it's real. If you don't believe me, do your own research. Get over it. The cryptos. Bitcoin's up 5.6%. Ethereum's up 5.5%. Litecoin up 5.4%. Ripple up 10, 11%. People making loot. NEO was up 22% earlier today. Now it's only up about 15%. But the point is, these things are probably in a bubble. But governments are testing their own cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin-like money may emerge in countries where cash is in decline or financial networks need updates. The people of Sweden, where we found our study about nanoparticles making fish stupid, are breaking up with cash. The number of banknotes and coins in circulation has fallen to its lowest level in 3 decades. Riksbank, Sweden's central bank, estimates that cash transactions made up only 15% of all retail transactions last year, down from 40% in 2010, thanks in part to massively popular mobile payment services, paying with your phone, stuff like that. It goes on, talking about using technologies like Bitcoin. If you want more info on that, check it out. This article, let's see. See if I can find anything worth reciting here. But check it out, MIT Technology Review. They generally are regarded as knowing what they're talking about. Many central banks' wholesale payment systems are facing a problem. They're based on obsolete programming languages and outdated database designs. The governments are looking for ways to modernize them. The central banks of Canada and Singapore both recently demonstrated prototype distributed ledger-based wholesale payment systems that handle clearing and settling simultaneously via a cryptocurrency token. China is also performing similar tests. Okay, of course, China, their central bank, cautiously testing a digital currency. China also shut down all their ICOs, their Bitcoin exchanges the other day. MIT going behind a paywall too, that sucks. The People's Republic of China has developed a digital currency that's designed to scale to the number of transactions made every day across the country. By Will Knight, June 23rd, 2017. Mish, a man, the myth, the legend, the global economic trend analyzer, chiming in on Monday, September 25th, 2017, saying Bitcoin is probably worth zero. At this moment on September 27th, 2015, this has got to be wrong. Yeah, Mish, you got a typo here, bud. 2017, at least in your headline here. It's worth $3,786.50. Yeah, Wall Street Journal writer James McIntosh says Bitcoin's wild ride shows the truth. It is probably worth zero. Okay, it goes on and on. You know, I don't know what to make of Bitcoin, but I will say I keep a close eye on it, and I'm very wary of it becoming the next big scam, right? People, your average person that's trading Bitcoin right now, your average person that's enjoying a 5.657% gain on their investment today is not doing it because they're trying to take down the central banks. They're doing it because they're trying to make money doing nothing. Speculation, right? So the people who have a religious fervor for Bitcoin, just bear in mind that if there's a more profitable thing out there, people are going to jump ship to it. If the government starts regulating it or replaces, they bring up their own replacement currency and say, this cryptocurrency is good, these cryptocurrencies are illegal, what do you think is going to happen? I don't know. But then again, we live in the era of hackers, right? Where's that hacker? So whatever you hackers want to do to try to save us from the government, I'm all for a little assistance. Not saying you should destroy things, but you got a way to make a cryptocurrency that's completely immune to government meddling, I'm all ears. All ears. But it sounds like the IRS, for example, has been monitoring Bitcoin since 2015. So, Mish chiming in, one thing's for certain, Bitcoin is not the next gold. Gold is gold, nothing else, right? Saying Bitcoin is the next gold is kind of like saying pink is the new black. There's only one black. Moving along. Out of economics into international relations. I'm just making sure we still got viewers here. We do. I'm just going to read a few of these. Ahmed Rahman says you're good. Right on. Thanks, bud. Appreciate you. J.M. Stairs chiming in. I heard 70% of money is in computer code. I'm not surprised about cash circulation decreases. Yeah, I'm not really surprised about it, but at the same time, there is the kind of war on cash going on. If we Google that, good thing I'm a pretty fast typer. We can get a lot of articles on the war on cash. It's interesting. Cash is nice if you want to, cash, getting paid in cash, buying goods and services in cash is the only way to truly avoid detection, right? Or you could use precious metals or whatever. But bottom line, even if you're trading cryptos, even if you're doing Bitcoin, cryptocurrency stuff, the IRS has been watching that. If you don't believe me, look it up. You can see Forbes, big government waging war on cash, myths behind the war on cash. Infographic, the global war on cash. The global war on cash has got a whole heading there, Business Insider. The Street, The war on cash. How to fight back in the war on cash. The war on cash. So it's it's a phenomenon. It's got some traction behind it, um, and I don't know. I wouldn't mind being totally upfront with all my financial and economic dealings if the government wasn't so damn corrupt. I'd rather not pay taxes if they're going to use them to go blow people up in Yemen and Syria, places like that. And speaking of blowing people up in places like Syria, there's old Putin and the head honcho of China, whose name I can't remember, a failing emperor. This came out on the 25th, just a couple of days ago. It's an opinion piece from Strategic Culture. Looking at the global political landscape over the last month, two trends are becoming more apparent. The infamous military and economic power at America's disposal is declining, whereas in the multipolar field, an acceleration has occurred in the creation of a series of infrastructures, mechanisms, and procedures to contain and limit the negative effects of America's declining unipolar moment. This series of 3 articles will focus firstly on the military aspect of these ongoing changes, then the economics at play, and finally, how and why smaller countries are transitioning from the unipolar camp to the multipolar field. Okay? We see this in places like Venezuela, where they're now trading oil for gold. Naturally, this does not please Führer Trump and the rest of the folks in the Western military-industrial complex, but we'll see what happens. And we can see it in Syria too. The Syrian Arab Army, that's the army of Syria, not the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is supported by Uncle Sam. The SAA, the Syrian government, and its allies, which is Russia, have completed the historic and strategic liberation of Deir ez-Zor, a city besieged for more than 5 years by Islamists belonging to Al-Qaeda and Daesh. The focus is now shifted from the oil fields south of the city, with a frantic rush by both the SDF and the SAA to free territory still held by Daesh. The final goal is to claim Syria's resources and strengthen a weak U.S. position. Okay, it goes on and on and on and on and on. You want to read this whole thing? I'm not going to read it all to you right now. My voice is kind of going downhill. But out of the South China Morning Post today, Henry Kissinger, the butcher from Boston, whatever you want to call him, the guy who once said the greatest priority of our agenda towards the third world should be depopulation. He said that back in the 70s. Well, he knows if you can't beat him, join him. Kissinger, unelected old crotchety, creepy bastard that he is, urges greater cooperation with China as the world's center of gravity shifts. U.S. elder statesman tells a Columbia University conference the only alternative to positive relations between Washington and Beijing is global destruction. Okay, so this kind of brings it home. We're told that the Russians are enemies, we're told the Chinese are enemies, but in reality, you got rich people, you got poor people. You got rich people in D.C., you got these rich bankers. What do they want? They want tax havens. Puerto Rico could be the next hot tax haven. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, hysteria is starting to spread. Puerto Rico devastated by the wake of Hurricane Maria. Here at Wake Up News, we pondered the question, why in the era when the military-industrial complexes all over the world possess advanced weather modification weaponry, initially conjured up from the brilliant mind of Nikola Tesla and translated, oddly enough, by John G. Trump, Donnie Trump's uncle, for the U.S. military. Why the hell are places being destroyed by record disasters when these technologies could prevent them? I'm going to close out today with I've got a few other things, but this book, Chemtrails Expose the New Manhattan Project. Guys like Dane Wigington want us all to stop using the word chemtrails, but I think it's pretty accurate in a sense that it includes all sorts of chemicals being sprayed out of airplanes, not just geoengineering chemicals. Our dear friend Dane wants us to use the word geoengineering, saying that chemtrails has been widely developed as a conspiracy theory. So here we see, look at all these articles, recent stuff, 25,000 results in the mainstream news. You're never going to find Wake Up News listed here in the Google News result. I can promise you that. But let's just click the first one that comes up. So Dane tells us use the word geoengineering. Don't say chemicals, say geoengineering. Humans have been accidentally geoengineering for centuries with dust and things. Shouldn't we, at what point should we do it on purpose, they ask. But the key thing about using the word geoengineering, we find this term, is climate, one controversial solution is climate geoengineering. Oh, why'd you do that to me? The notion that we could halt or reverse the warming of Earth with technological intervention. These concepts have historically fallen into two camps: solar radiation management and greenhouse gas removal. I hate when pages do that, don't you? Okay, the point I'm trying to make here is every time they use the word geoengineering in an article, and this is interesting, this is Forbes writing this a couple days ago. Yeah, geoengineering. The point I'm trying to make is every time they talk about geoengineering, they always define the term as mitigating climate change. Let's see if I can find the word mitigate. There we go. We're now at a point where while mitigation is necessary, it's not necessarily sufficient. Combined with mitigation, how Keith, Mack, and McMartin, David Keith from Harvard, all emphasize that geoengineering alone cannot solve the problem of anthropogenic climate change. Combined with mitigation, however, it could shave off a temperature peak or slow warming enough to buy humans some time. Okay, the point I'm trying to make is that if you look, if you research geoengineering, it's always defined only as the mitigation of climate change. Right? We could use the term weather weaponry. We could use the term weather warfare. We could say stratospheric aerosol deployment. But geoengineering is by definition to mitigate climate change. Geoengineering is by definition, if we're going to take the definition that's repetitively pounded into our heads by the mainstream media, it is designed to slow climate change and nothing else. And God knows that no one would ever possibly use it for any other reason. At least that's how mainstream media portrays it to us. In closing today, I've been doing this new thing. I got a YouTube channel too. I'm experimenting with this whole live stream thing with this new program. It's kind of fun. I think I'm going to get better at it. Probably have to get a new computer to do it right. But I'm doing a new thing where on YouTube, as I'm writing articles and researching, I'm going live. And people can join me and help out. And I will give people co-author credits on articles, videos, interviews, everything like that. Crowd streaming the creative process, Puerto Rico Hurricane Maria coverage. Check it out on my YouTube. My video URL there, I think it's subject to change, but I'm just going to paste it in here and see what shows up. Yeah, the URL changes, but if you find me on YouTube, you can follow me there. I got a pretty good following there, a couple thousand people. Nothing like here on Facebook though, through Wake Up News. On a similar vein, I have got a Patreon page now. I was contacted by a woman up in Montana named Jill, who was sweet enough, kind enough, generous enough, supportive enough, forward-thinking enough to want to be my first patron on Patreon. You can say I have 0 patrons. I'm making $0 a month from my efforts on Patreon. And she tried to submit a payment through my Patreon page to be my first patron, but they wouldn't let her. It froze up on her phone. She wasn't able to do it. So she ended up putting a comment on my blog saying, hey, I tried to subscribe to your Patreon, but it wouldn't let me. So is there another way I can send you some money? And she's the first person that has actually donated any money to my work in the last 5 years. So thank you, Jill. Appreciate you very much. But the point is, anybody else wants to support my work, check out my Patreon. Here, we're actually having some fun with it. $3 a month gets you some stuff. $6 a month gets you even more stuff. That's a whopping 20 cents per day. $9 a month, 30 cents per day gets you the full kit and caboodle. You can see all my Wake Up Wyoming videos post on there too. So I'm hoping to do this full time, but I need to eat. I've really got to eat. Tired of everybody thinking I'm a total loser because I don't make any money. And I'd rather be, I'd rather have some measure of stability in my life. So if you like what I do, you're going to see a lot more of it. It's going to get a lot better. Check out my Patreon. Also, check out the YouTube channel there where I go live while working on stuff. And it's cool. I think we can get a good working group together and really cause some change together, through working together. Everybody's got their own skills. And if everybody puts a little effort in every day, working together, like really and truly working together, we can actually make a difference. But if it's just individual lone wolves doing their little thing, it ain't going to work out. I'm going to check out the comments here. Kate Nella says, you are not a loser. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Prove it. But anyway, we still got the likes flowing, and we got 40 viewers as we go into the 76th minute here. Again, I can't stress it enough. The silencing of dissent is very real. We can even see it on the Wake Up News Facebook page right here. In the last week since we started talking about the hurricane, we've got several contributors at Wake Up News. In the last week, everything has dropped by 20 to 42%. Total video views, page follows, post engagement, people reached, and likes. Usually this people reached hovers around 1.3 million. Okay, so it's a huge hit there. But I like to keep an eye on this stuff just to know. So anybody wants to help out, if you want to share our stuff, that's great. But if you share this video, like today, we had 131 likes at least. Lots of people sharing it. Still got 44 people watching. Thank you so much. Odds are, if you just hit share and it goes to your wall, not that many people are going to see it. So, if you really want to get the message out, post it in some groups. Get together an email list. And if something really resonates with you, send it to all your associates by email. Because these social media networks, they do provide a medium that we can use, but they also censor us. So it's up to all of us. If we really want to get the message out, we got to take it to the next level. Hitting like, hitting share is great. It's huge. We love you. We appreciate you. But it goes above and beyond that. And an important thing to note is, on the trajectory this world is on, if there's going to be some revolution someday, you're not going to find out what's really going on via Facebook. When shit hits the fan, odds are they're going to totally destroy Wake Up News on Facebook and every other independent media outlet like it, right? So that's what I'm thinking. So it's important that we have these more resilient networks and try to jump ship. But at the same time, this is where all the people are now. So let's all keep doing our part. You want to help me out with my creative process here, with our creative process. Tomorrow, I'll be getting into this again with this live stream thing tomorrow morning on YouTube, live streaming the creative process, writing an article. You might be able to teach me something about how to research. You might be able to share a link. Somebody from Puerto Rico who's on the ground, put them in touch if they have cell service, if they have power, if they have water, food, or if they don't, let's talk to them about it. Let's get the real story out there and let's flip it back around and look at this whole weather modification agenda on top of it all, because that's, in my opinion, the biggest issue in the world today. If people are playing God with the weather, they control everything else, and that's not acceptable, especially when they're a bunch of lying, thieving, murderous bastards, right? So it's your boy Mog. Stay active, stay positive, stay aware. I'm going outside. I'm going to go have some fun outside. I'm going to a pizza party at a friend's house this evening, but I'm going to take my dog for a walk right now, go for a bike ride, and then take a nice shower, clean up, and go have some fun with some friends. I hope you all do the same too. You know, it's not just online. We can do things all day, every day in our lives. So, thank you. It's your boy Mog. Much love for all of you. I'm signing off. One love. Peace.